The biggest names in sports are all on IsraelSportsRadio.com.
Back here on Lewis Live, our thanks to Jim Williams of the Washington Examiner for breaking down the business side of sports. Certainly great to always have Jim, but we have a very special guest on right now on the line.
Yes, Laura Stamm from the Stamm International Power Skating System. Laura, how are you?
I am very well, thank you. And how are you?
Doing well, thank God. We hear, so you're not in Alaska, which is your home base right now. You're actually on the East Coast of the United States. What's that like?
Well, I'm from the East Coast. I'm from New York. And, in fact, I brought my children up in New York. And I didn't move to Alaska until they were out of college and well out of the house. So that's when I moved to Alaska. But I come back and forth both for business and because this is where my family is.
Oh, fair enough. Well, it's not every day that a woman on the ice can change a player's skating career, let alone have that player become world class. So on that note, I got to ask you, how did you get started with this whole power skating system? Was it power skating when you started? Was it something else that evolved into that? Walk us through that.
Well, the term power skating was around. I started in about 1969. But power skating really meant stops and starts and how fast can you skate and turn around backwards and how fast can you skate backwards and turn around forward. But there was no such thing as technique training for hockey skating. And when I started, that's what I focused my energies on, was trying to improve the speed and agility of players by improving their skating technique. And how did I get started? I was a figure skater by training, and I loved hockey. And I happened to skate and teach figure skating out of a rink where the New York Rangers practiced. That was their practice facility. And so I used to go in the mornings to watch their practices and just observe, because I didn't really know anything except what I saw. And when the players would get off the ice, they would usually go to the snack bar and have a cup of coffee or grab something to eat.
Right.
And I would say, why do you do this? And why do you do that? And why don't you do this? And why don't you do that? And they used to joke with me and say, why don't you mind your own business? But then one of the players who ran a summer hockey school out of that particular rink, said, we'd love it if you would come out and work with our youngsters at our hockey school and try to help them with their skating. So I said, well, I really wouldn't know what I'm doing. I don't know anything other than what I happen to see and know about skating through my training. And they said, no, we really want you to do that. So I said, okay, and that's how I got started. And I loved it from the very second that I ever got on the ice with those hockey players. And that particular summer, I only had figure skates. I had never been on hockey skates. Mm-hmm. And so I went out in my figure skates. And by the next summer, I had hockey skates already. And that's how it started in 1970, I believe, or 71.
Well, I before we get into what power skating involves and we talk more about that, what is the importance of power skating itself for a hockey player's repertoire in his game? How important is it?
Well, skating are your wheels, It's like if you're playing soccer and you can't run. It's like if you're trying to play hockey and you can't skate. Or if you can't skate well. Or if you can't skate fast. And the game of hockey has evolved into a game of tremendous speed, where the players are not only fast, but they're big. They're big and they're fast. And it's pretty remarkable, actually, when I look at players today and see how fast they're moving. And it actually seems as though the speed increases day by day, not even year by year. But why is it important? Power skating is just a term. You can call it technique training. You can call it skating for speed. You can call it speed and agility training. But power skating is a phrase, that has become synonymous with hockey skating. And its importance is that, it's like if you're in any sport and your technique is bad, your chances of performing to your utmost capabilities are probably fairly slim.
Now,
and there are players who are fast with poor technique, but
Right.
It's not efficient fast, and I try to teach efficiently fast skating.
Now, you're talking about the difference between the players themselves from the 70s when you started to now. They've gotten bigger and faster, but we also know that the skates itself, the pads that they use, everything has kind of changed from then to now. Has the skates, the blades that are used, the skates that they have on their feet, because of those changing over the course of time, has that also made you evolve your routine with them, what you teach them, your skating system?
Now, I don't really think that the skates affect the technique, but what skates have, the things that skates have done is, well, they've made them, first of all, very stiff, but I don't happen to like very stiff skates, but that's a personal issue. But they're lighter and stiffer, and the reason they're stiff is because players who are on them for hours every single day are going to break them down pretty quickly. So they try to give them more life, because breaking in skates is a tedious and painful process. Nobody likes it. So they try to make the skates last longer, but still taking away some of the weight. And they've done that with the pads, too, with the protective gear. They're trying to give them more protection with less weight. And that definitely affects speed, because if you're wearing a heavy pair of clunking skates and your equipment weighs 50 pounds, that's definitely going to impact your speed. So they try to make it light and still, strong.
Now, you said you started way back in the early 70s. Who was your first significant student that you had under your tutelage?
The first significant student was a young man by the name of Bob Nystrom, who was a rookie with the New York Islanders. And I was contacted by the New York Islanders organization because they felt that he had great promise as a player, but his skating was suspect, and that he really needed some work on his speed and his agility and his balance. And they felt that if he didn't improve in those areas, he probably wouldn't make the team. He would be, go to the minor leagues. And so they asked me if I would work with him during the summer when I was teaching at the hockey school that I was working at 5 days a week. And so I said, sure, I would. And we started working 5 days a week from 6 o'clock to 7 o'clock in the morning every day. And then that went on for 8 weeks. And at the end of it, I had always said to Bob, don't worry, I'm never going to tell anybody that I'm out here teaching you, because at that time it was unheard of to have a female coach teaching a professional NHL hockey player.
Right.
So I never told anybody, but he blabbed to the whole world that if it wasn't for me, he never would have made it to the NHL. And I believe that he was Rookie of the Year that year.
And I was going to say,
not 100% sure.
And here I was going to say that we're hearing first on Israel Sports Radio that your first student was Bob Nystrom, but I guess he beat us to the punch.
Who did?
Bob, by proclaiming to all of his friends that it was.
Oh
you.
Yeah, he proclaimed it to the whole to the media, and of course now what that did was it spearheaded my career, because all of a sudden I became famous, and I was getting radio interviews and TV interviews, and other teams were contacting me, NHL teams, and so it was like a whirlwind. It was unbelievable. How something like that can just jolt you out into the front of your field.
Well, speaking of radio interviews, here we are, and you are on the radio right now. So, again, it continues. And my question for you, Laura, is what is that like personally to see that? Did you work with someone that maybe is not on such a high level skating, and then you help them skate, and they take off, like in Bob Nystrom's career, becoming Rookie of the Year? What is that like for you personally?
Oh, it's unbelievably rewarding. Just to think that if I had anything to do with it, just a little bit to do with it, it's amazingly gratifying, and it's what has kept me doing this for 40 years, is that I love making people better, and I love helping them. And there have been so many pros. I have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of letters from players that I taught, who played in the NHL or in the minor leagues or college, thanking me for everything that I did for them. I mean, I maybe have thousands of letters. I don't even know.
So you're saying this is not just limited to the NHL level, but even when you started, it was whoever and however that wanted to better their skating would come seek you out.
Right. Well, what I was doing at this hockey school is I was working with kids. We had 3 groups of youngsters, and the first group was like from 7 to 9 years old, and then 10 to 12, and then 13 and up. And some of those players went on to play in the NHL, especially the ones in the older group that I taught back then.
Yeah.
I think the Mullen brothers were there, who were very big in hockey in their day. Nick Fatiu played NHL hockey. He played for several teams. He played for the New York Rangers.
Mm-hmm.
But they came out of that hockey school that I worked from. And then for many years after that, I worked for a hockey school, summer hockey school in British Columbia. I was there for 18 years. And so many players came out of that hockey school and, kept telling me over and over and over how much I affected their hockey, how I helped them
with their careers,
to achieve their goals.
Right. Now, I for one know that I know how to skate backwards and forwards. I could probably turn here and there, but it seems like there are more important points to successful skating than just that. What are some of the points that you teach?
Well, as the game has evolved, you have to modify what you're teaching to keep up with the sport. The game has become a sport where there's so much movement, not just straight forward or straight backwards, but weaving in and out, both forward and backwards. There's a tremendous amount, we call it lateral motion, and very, very quick turning and changes of direction. I mean, the whole sport is changes of direction. How quickly can you change and go? And
Right.
Explosive speed. And so as things progressed and as I learned more, I started focusing in on, okay, how can I help players to accomplish these things? Change direction quicker, move laterally better, faster, with the puck, of course, and without the puck.
Right.
Cut off an opponent if you're a defenseman, and all of the things that hockey today is. It's not a straight up the line and down the line game that it was in the 70s when I started. It was basic back then. It was just basically, you go up your wing or step up the center if you're a centerman, and the defenseman hung back. Well, now the defensemen can come into the forward position almost as well as a forward can.
Right. So it's kind of like I was just born in the wrong generation, and had I been born about 40, 50 years ago, I probably could have sought you out in the late 60s, early 70s, and probably propelled my NHL career. But I hear you. I understand. It wasn't meant to be. That's why I'm here doing radio. But I got to ask you.
Well, I didn't do it either. See, that's why I'm a teacher.
Right.
Because I'm a teacher, not a performer on the ice in hockey. And we didn't even have women's hockey or girls hockey when I was growing up, so I never really got to play the way the women play today.
Oh, but at least you got to perform with your figure skating career. I didn't even get that. They didn't even let me go with that.
I think I was born with skates on.
Fair enough. And we know that you have various schools throughout the United States, and some in Canada, some in Europe. Is there like a minimum age that your schools will not go below? Is there a minimum age of requirement, minimum skill requirement that you need in order to enroll a person, a player, a child into your school?
Yeah, well, we're not a learn to skate program, so people who can't skate, we would not take them into our program because we feel that they have to get the fundamentals of skating down. So generally we don't take anybody unless they can skate forward and at least somewhat backwards. And the age it's flexible, but generally from 7 years old and up, more preferably 8 and up. But we get a lot of youngsters who are really quite proficient at the ages of 7 and even occasionally 6. So you have to go by the individual as well as by a general rule.
Now,
but you definitely, if you can't skate, we would put you in a learn to skate program. We wouldn't encourage you to come into our program.
Yeah, you're not the try to skate, you'll fall on you're behind a bunch of times, then you'll get back up and you'll eventually get there. That's not how you work.
No.
All right.
No, we're very technically oriented, and so that's one of the reasons why a very young kid would not be very happy in our program, because it's technical, and they have to be able to concentrate. I mean, we try to make it fun, and we try to talk to whatever age level we're teaching, but it is intense. You know, the learning experience is quite intense, and so the kids have to be ready for it.
What would
and they have to want to do it.
Right. Well, of course, that's the main thing. If it's much more difficult for a student to learn when he or she is being forced to learn. Now, what is your clinic consist of? Is it a weekend, a week, 2 weeks? How does it work if somebody were to want to send their child to one of your skating systems?
A typical program, and again, this varies because sometimes we're limited by time and by the ice availability. But a typical program of ours would be run for an hour-and-a-half session, to meet 3 times or 4 times or even 5 times. Now, occasionally we can only do 2 times because we can't get any more ice, or an organization, a hockey organization, may hire us to come in and teach on their ice,
right.
You know, with their team or their organization. And so we just have to do whatever they have available. Maybe they only want us to come in once for an hour.
Right.
You can't learn that much in 1 hour, one time. You know, you can give a couple of little ideas, but I mean, learning requires repetition, and so we have our program. It builds on itself. You know, you start with your basics and you work from there, and you're always reviewing, and then you're always adding new things.
A lot of homework.
And you know, so it's a definite educational approach to teaching skating.
Now, how has your system grown over the years? How have you added different pointers and notes to what you teach, what you have today as your product?
Well, one, by keeping track of the sport and seeing what's going on so that you know how the sport itself is changing. And we have I have several instructors, and we have periodic meetings where we talk about what we're teaching and how we're teaching it, and what our vocabulary is when we're teaching it, how we can improve interacting with the students, how can we make it more fun, how can we make it more challenging. And so I think it's we don't want to be stagnant. You know, you always have to be moving forward and learning ourselves. I mean, I'm always learning. And I watch other instructors sometimes, and I see some of the things that they do, and I say, that's really good, or I don't like that. You know, so you learn from others, too.
Now, Laura, you mentioned working with Bob Nystrom. What are some other big names that you've worked with, if you care to share with us, that are currently playing the NHL or used to play the NHL, what have you?
Well, you know, I'm getting older, so some of them don't play in the NHL anymore because they got older, too. Luc Robitaille would be one.
Wow.
There were 2 players, Scott and Rob Niedermeyer, who were both phenomenal skaters.
Yes.
Doug Brown and his brother Greg Brown. Currently, there's a player on the Philadelphia Flyers by the name of Matt Carl, and a player on the New York Rangers by the name of Brandon Dubinsky, both whom I taught when they were kids.
Well, Dubinsky's a local boy.
Alaska. Both of them are from Alaska.
Oh, okay. I only knew Dubinsky's from Alaska.
They played for the New York Rangers, but grew up in Alaska, and
Gotcha.
I taught them up there. And there are several who are now coaches who I taught when they were youngsters, and Peter Laviolette, who's a coach for the Philadelphia Flyers, is one of my former students. I can't think of his name right now, but the Buffalo Sabres coach.
Lindy Ruff.
Lindy Ruff is one of my former students.
Now,
so it goes on and on and on and on and on.
Yeah, the Rolodex keeps on growing. That's for sure. Now, I got to ask you, because I heard from different people that you are a really phenomenal storyteller, that you have some fantastic stories that have happened to you, both from when you started and go all throughout the years that you've been doing this. Care to share any tidbits?
Oh, I don't really have fantastic stories. I have one cute story. When
Okay.
that Nick Fatiu and I were talking one day, and he played for the New York Rangers at that time. And somebody came over and said to him, "Who's that lady I saw you with?" And he said, "That's no lady, that's my coach." So I've had things like that happen. I had one player, he was very intimidating. His name was Tiger Williams. And a fellow he was from British Columbia. And I remember when I was teaching him, I think he was with the Philadelphia Flyers at the time. And he was so intimidating. Oh, I'd look into his eyes, and they were so intense. I was scared. I was literally scared that I was going to just tick him off and he was going to fly off the handle or something like that. So at one point I said to him, "Tiger, I hope you don't mind, but I have to be critical, so I hope you'll forgive me if I'm critical." And he said to me, "If you're not critical, I don't want you."
All right.
Just like that.
Oh,
So
Tiger's saying
I was
how it
very
is.
fortunate in that I never wanted to work with, especially with pros, if they didn't want to work with me. I didn't want to be pushing myself on anybody or forcing myself or my, techniques on anybody. And so I think I was pretty lucky that I basically had players who wanted to be there. And therefore you have a willing audience. You're not trying to pull teeth on somebody who's resisting. I currently, when I'm in Alaska, I volunteer my time, and I do a lot of volunteering now of my time, and I work with some of the Alaska Aces players.
Right.
That's a minor league team for the East Coast Hockey League. Even though they're in Alaska, they call it the East Coast Hockey League. But anyway, I just got an email from the coach asking me when I was coming back because some of the guys are asking when I can come out and work with them again.
Huh. There you go.
So those are the kinds of students I like.
Yeah, for sure. Now, I got to ask you, your school kind of stretches from the west coast of the United States and Canada all the way into Eastern and Northern Europe. Any possibility that you'll keep going a little farther east and make your way over to the Mideast, possibly even Israel?
I would love to come to Israel.
All right.
I don't know what the possibilities are. I know there's hockey, and I know I don't know how many rinks you have, but I told Yossi that I would love to come over and put on a program over there.
We'll definitely have to work our magic and look into our contacts and see what we can pull out for you. But
that would be great.
Yeah.
In April, I'm supposed to go to St. Petersburg, Russia, because there's a big seminar of Russian hockey coaches, and I think Eastern Europe hockey coaches, and they want me to come over and do a presentation on my skating techniques to them.
Oh, that'll be fun.
So that will be interesting.
You speak Russian, or are you going to have a translator?
I'll have a translator, and I'm bringing an assistant, one of my assistant instructors, who's also a marvelous skater, and he happens to be Russian.
Oh,
so I won't have any problems.
Right, no, for sure. That'll definitely bridge the gap and help you out over there. But Laura, we are a little pressed for time here, but we thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to come on here with us on Lewis Live on IsraelSportsRadio.com. Laura Stamm, good luck over the rest of the way, and have fun in Russia.
Well, thank you, and it's been a pleasure speaking with you. Have a wonderful time living and working in Israel.